Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are going to be counting down the top 5 top list videos that I have put up on this channel over the years. So the way this is going to work is quite simply, I'm going to go through 5 of my top 5 list videos, summarize each one very briefly, and then move on to the next, and talk about the theme of it, the ships that I chose, and why I chose those ships for that topic, and we will do this for 5 of them. So let's go ahead and get going with number 5, which was my very first top 5 premium ship video that I put out on August 14th, 2018. I was still using an absolutely potato mic back then. It in fact hurt myself to listen to myself sound like I'm speaking through what is essentially a wet sock thrown into a dryer and then grinded through a cheese shredder afterwards. That's what that mic sounds like. But anyway, the very first 5 ships to be in a top 5 premium ships video. This is back before I had my insane fleet of premiums, because I hadn't really started reviewing premiums full force just yet. So I chose the October Revolution because it was the first Russian battleship in the game back then, and it's still a pretty darn good tier 5 premium ship. It's got all those lovely Russian battleship guns with its Russian AP, and its quick cooldown on its damage con, but limited damage con. It was the very first ship to have that in-game. And plus it is quite tanky as well. Then number 4 for that video was the Alabama, which the Alabama still today is a pretty darn good mid-range American battleship. It's not a sniper, it's not a brawler, but at mid-range this ship really hurts. If you play it like a super heavy cruiser kind of, you can do a lot of damage there. And it still has good AA, even though after the CV rework and all that jazz, and AA is not that potent now. Alabama is one of the few pre-CV rework ships that maintained a good chunk of its AA power after the rework. And plus she does have 9 16-inch guns with American AP and pretty darn decent accuracy. Not to the same levels as the North Carolina, but still a pretty good ship there. Number 3 for this list was the Scharnhorst, the tier 7 premium German battleship, and the Scharnhorst is still one of my favorite ships in the game. It plays like a very large cruiser, or super cruiser, or a battle cruiser, if you will. Pretty maneuverable, decent secondary. Secondaries aren't as good as the Gneisenau, though. They can't pin to the same level that the Gneisenau secondaries can, but she still has torpedoes, decent secondary range, and after the commander rework, a little bit more range on her secondaries, which was very much needed for the Gneisenau and the Scharnhorst, so I'm glad they got that. Number 2 for this list was the Kronstadt, the tier 9 Soviet supercruiser. This was the first supercruiser added to the game, I do believe. I think it beat the Stalingrad out, or they both came out around the same time. But this was the first one that was like available to the masses. It wasn't locked behind a steel wall like the Stalingrad was. And comparing Kronstadt nowadays to some of the supercruisers we have now, good God, have times changed. The Kronstadt, by the way, it's essentially Stalingrad Jr. It has the Stalingrad's guns, but they're down tier to tier 9. So they're nowhere near as accurate as the Stalingrad. Kronstadt hurts, don't get me wrong, but she has battleship dispersion. Once you get in close, though, Kronstadt packs one heck of a punch. I mean, it's a truly heavy hitter for being a cruiser. It hits well above its weight class when it gets close. And, of course, she has the same health pool as some tier 9 battleships as well, so she's a pretty darn tanky ship. And then number 1 for this video was the Massachusetts, the tier 8 premium American battleship that was sadly removed here not that long ago. She's basically an Alabama, but with German levels of secondaries and German accuracy. However, American battleship dispersion, meaning that the shells do come out of the barrels kind of wonky, but they don't move around too much in the air. So pretty heavy hitter there. Plus she gets an improved hill and an improved damage, well, not an improved damage con, but a quick cooldown on her hill, and that American battleship damage con, that long duration, decent reloading American damage con. Fantastic ship, sadly that she isn't available anymore. Alright, moving down to number 4, we had the top 5 premiums to avoid buying. And this was the first video where I suggested you guys not buy the ships listed in the video. This was quite some time after my first top 5 video. So the ships in this one was the Udanchi, the tier 7 Japanese torpedo boat that's just hot garbage here on the PC version of World of Warships, but apparently on World of Warships Legends she's quite the powerhouse. That caused a bit of confusion in the comment section, because here, like, her torpedoes can be spotted from the moon. She has garbage torpedo angles and basically no guns. I mean, the guns, the turrets rotate so long, the reload speed is so long, you're basically dead if you run across anything really that can aim at you. Next up was the Mikasa, the tier 2 Japanese battleship. I mean, the Mikasa nowadays is actually better than the Mikasa of back then, because they hadn't introduced bots into lower tiers just yet. Nowadays, bots just fill in any empty spaces from, I believe, tier 4 and below. So bots like the Unga Bunga and Mikasa with a secondary build on it is actually quite good. So if you got a bunch of bots that are just Unga Boogieing into you, Mikasa is quite the powerhouse now at tier 2, interestingly enough. Next up was the Indianapolis, the tier 7 American heavy cruiser. This is, of course, the ship that in real life carried the atomic bomb over that did wind up being dropped on Hiroshima. But in game, she's unfortunately not that impressive. She does have radar at tier 7, which she's still pretty unique for that. But other than that, a pretty mediocre ship all around. I really wouldn't recommend buying it. Then for number 2 in this video, we had the Verbis Unitas, the tier 5 Austro-Hungarian battleship that's marked as pan-European, and this ship was unfortunately a big letdown. She has some absolutely god-tier bow armor, well, lower bow armor at least. She can bounce Yamato shells with ease, but unfortunately she has the hit pool of like a tier 3 battleship. So she's terribly squishy because of that. You know, if you don't manage to get the shells to hit your bow armor, you're gonna like eat crap and eat it hard. One torpedo takes out like a third of your health. It's unfortunate that this ship has such a low health pool and is at tier 5. It really should be probably at tier 4. Her guns do hit pretty hard though. She gets 12 guns at tier 5, which is pretty good, and they are pretty darn accurate. But to get them off, you do have to show, unfortunately, a bit of side. So yeah, it's a really cool ship historically, but unfortunately, it's just not that great of a ship in game. And not to mention, she doesn't have AA like at all. And you're a tier 5 battleship, which means you can see tier 6 carriers, and you literally have 2 AA guns. That's it. So yeah. And the number 1 ship for this list was the Graf Zeppelin, who, since this list has been out, has been nerfed even more. Man, Graf Zeppelin, it's like Wargaming just pushed the thing down the stairs and said see ya at the bottom whenever you stop getting nerfed. Yeah, poor Graf Zeppelin. I mean, I could make a 30-minute video, like legitimately a 30-minute video, going over all the nerfs this ship has got. And it's a carrier, so, I mean, I get a lot of people don't like carriers, but, like, man, poor Graf Zeppelin was looking like an absolute god-tier carrier during its development cycle, and right before she got released, they pulled the rug right out from under us, and we got the Graf Zeppelin that we got nowadays. So, like, her bombs have been nerfed, her torpedoes have been nerfed, her rocket planes have been nerfed, the ellipse has changed on just about every single plane unit. I think it has. Yeah, the ellipse has changed on every single squadron except maybe the torpedo bombers, I think. And a lot of times it's for the worse. So like I say now, Graf Zeppelin's more of a heavy cruiser with 3 flavors of spotting aircraft, more so than an actual CV now. But yeah, that's a very brief overview of the Graf Zeppelin. Definitely the worst tier 8 carrier. Alright. Number 3 was the top 5 future premium ships list. Now this one I actually liked making. I made 3 of these. This was really cool to make. So basically the gist was I was coming up with 5 ships that should be made into premium ships, and they're all real steel ships, or they were at the very least planned and laid down. And I really did enjoy making these. So this was, I believe, the second one. So the first ship was the Abraham Christensen, which that was that ship during World War II that decided it didn't want to be spotted by the Japanese, so it disguised itself as an island. And it was like a mine layer, like a destroyer escort or something. It wasn't really a a front-of-the-line combat ship. But I said, they can make it a planned refit, give it 2 turrets, put it at tier 2, charge $2 for it, and it'd be a pretty cool ship to have in game. They could even give it its island camouflage and give it like some stupidly low concealment range to reflect that it did sneak around as an island during World War II. I think that would be a pretty cool ship to see added into the game. Number 4 for this list was the USS Tennessee, meaning the Tennessee class, which we actually have in the game now as the California. The California in-game is a Tennessee class, which is, of course, the refit after Pearl Harbor. And that's where we got them thick girls from. And, God, this video is, I think, 2 years old, 2 or 3 years old at this point. And it was pretty cool to see that they actually made this ship in the game. But it's the California, but same thing. It's pretty cool to see that. I was a little tickled when I saw that. And then number 3 this go around was the Vittorio Veneto, which we are also getting in game right now and is in game right now as the tier 8 Italian battleship. Again, another cool thing to see come to fruition. Except I said all they had to do was make it the Roma, but more accurate guns, slow down the turret traverse, and I don't think SAP was even a thing when I made this video. I'm not sure if the Italian cruisers were out, but I didn't mention SAP at all. I said just make a Roma that could hit crap. Like, that's all they had to do. Even though right now Roma's in a pretty good place because of Deadeye, but sadly for the Roma, great for pretty much everybody else, Deadeye is changing sometime in the future according to Wargaming. Number 2 was a Giorgio Averov, the Greek, what was it? Protected cruiser. Yeah, protected cruiser. I think it would be pretty cool to see as a pan-European cruiser. Probably a tier 3, or I think it said tier 4, maybe tier 5 because of the caliber of the guns. But it would be pretty cool to see that ship come to fruition in game. And lastly, for this list, the number 1 ship was the USS Louisiana, the last planned and laid down Montana-class battleship. And I said, just give it the Massachusetts treatment, which we kind of got with the Ohio, except we got the 8 18-inch guns instead of the 12 16-inch guns, which I still think they can do Montana with Ohio secondaries, but the main batteries of the Montana. I think it'd be pretty cool to see that come to fruition too. And it was the last planned and named battleship for the U.S. Navy. Alright, coming on down to number 2, we had the top 5 credit farmers video. And this is where I counted down the 5 best credit farmers in the game that were available at that time, so no Missouri. And this is actually my most viewed top 5 video with 55,000 views. So number 5 in this video was Atlanta. I said because it's, the Atlanta, and this is before the Commander rework, obviously, so Atlanta still had a range back then, which still has a range today, but Flint doesn't have a range anymore. Atlanta's, of course, a great damage farmer back then. I mean, it's the Atlanta. It's a freaking machine gun. You hold down left mouse and farm to your heart's content. Ton of fires, tons of, again, I think this was pre-IFHE rework too, so a bit better damage farmer back then. Unfortunately, not as good of a damage farmer as today, but it can still work. I know several people that still play Atlanta that do very, very well on her. Number 4 in this video was the Lenin, the Tier 8 Soviet battleship that is leaving very soon, or is, the Lenin is leaving, hasn't left just yet. A ship that I do recommend you get. Great damage farmer. I mean, the 16-inch Soviet AP is absolutely god tier. And if you have Kutuzov with him as well, the Lenin is quite the survivable ship. Stay angled, don't show your broadside. The ship can tank for absolute days. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the best AA. Well, actually has pretty terrible AA too, so that is her weakness there. And of course, the Citadel is quite high, but if you angle, you'll be fine. Number 3 in this video was the Nelson, the Tier 7 British battleship, which is also leaving quite soon. However, she is a free XP ship, and you can acquire her right now for 375,000 free XP, and I definitely recommend you do that. She has that lovely British BB HE and British BB AP, which helps her out quite a bit because she's a Tier 7 battleship with 16-inch guns, which means if she didn't have that short fuse AP, she'd be overpinning like everything in her path. But thankfully she does have that, and her 16-inch guns pack quite the punch, and she gets a super heal as well to where you can simply print yourself another Nelson if you take too much damage. Number 2 in this video was the Smolensk, the Tier 10 Soviet light cruiser that has thankfully been removed from the armory. Smolensk was a terror of the seas for the 3 months that she, well, definitely for the first 3 months that she was out, they were absolutely everywhere. Great, great, great damage farmer, great at setting fires, insane rate of fire, only now ellipsed by the Alston. And her armor so thin, most large caliber guns just pass right through her, just tickling her slightly. And the number one ship for this list was Jean Bar, the Tier 9 French battleship. That's the Richelieu, up tier to Tier 9. The hull, in terms of hit points, is the same, but much more accurate guns. And you get the reload booster, too, on top of an already shortened reload time. So the Jean Bar can just vomit out 3 shells in 30 seconds that her reload booster is active for. She can vomit out 3 salvos in the time that her reload booster is active for. Wonderful, wonderful ship for damage farming, and has really, 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 really good AA, even in today's CV world. Unfortunately, she is no longer available. She was pulled quite some time ago. Alright, moving on down to number 1. The top 5 top list video is this one. Because, ladies and gentlemen, April Fools. Have a great Thursday. If you like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you guys in the next one.